think I may stop the recording if that's okay. And then maybe Julia, if you can start that like right at 9, and then Cornelia, you can get us going. It's fine to have the live stream running, but I don't want a bunch of extra time at the beginning of the
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Your Tanya, your sweater or blazer, I can't really tell exactly what it is really pretty. I love that.
It is a blazer.
Oh, cute. Very nice.
It says a lot of positive affirmations, love, let's do it, we got this, stuff like that.
Very cool. Very cool. It is one thing I miss about working in my own little home office so often is I don't get to like see people's cute outfits and get inspiration. Still have some people joining, but we can start the recording whenever you want, Cornelia. I don't want to interrupt you once you're talking, so I know it can be distracting.
Yep, looks like it's 9 o'clock. So yeah, they won't bother me coming in. So let's get started. I'll go ahead and start the recording. Good morning, everyone. My name is Cornelia Stevens. I'm the Executive Director of Top Early Learning Centers and have the privilege of serving as the chair of the Early Childhood Recommendations Panel. We'd like to thank you all for joining us here and for serving Kansas children and families across the state. This is a remote meeting. Today's meeting materials are posted on the panel meetings website at the Children's Cabinet's website, kschildrenscabinet.org. Panel members, we'd like you to clearly identify yourselves when you begin to speak. You can use the raise hand feature if you like to show that you would like to share, just so that we know we don't miss anybody if they have comment or questions, etc. For today's agenda, we are going to first approve our June agenda, approve the May meeting minutes that were sent out beforehand. We don't have anybody on the Kansas Open Forum, but we'll discuss that opportunity should anybody like to share information with the panel. We'll have an opportunity to hear from all of our work groups. We've each been assigned different tasks to work on to help support the Kansas strategic plan. And so we'll get updates from all of our work groups, and I'm looking forward to hearing all of that. We'll give you opportunities to discuss bright spots. And so start thinking about wonderful things that are happening within your organization or your communities, talk about upcoming meetings, and then we will adjourn. So the first thing on our meeting minutes is the approval of our June agenda. I would like to note that there is an amendment to our June agenda. We unfortunately had a last minute cancellation, and we will not have a presentation on the child care systems improvement team. And so the agenda has been amended to not include that presentation. So may I have an approval of the June agenda with that revision?
This is Tanya Bullock. I approve the agenda with the June revision made as is.
Perfect. May I have a second?
This is Natalie McLean. I'll second that.
Perfect. All those in favor? Thumbs up. Anyone opposed? Perfect. The May minutes were also sent out for review. Are there any modifications or adjustments needed to the May minutes? With none, may I have a motion to approve the May minutes as presented?
So moved.
This is Hannah White,
Trisha
Children's
Wagner.
Cabinet. I move to approve the minutes.
May I have a second?
Trisha Wagner, I second.
Perfect. All those in favor, thumbs up. Anyone opposed? Okay, perfect. We do not have anyone slated. Is that correct, Lindsay? We don't have anybody slated to present today. Okay, perfect. But please know that if in fact you would like, for anybody that's watching on live stream, if you would like to actually submit comments and speak to the panel, we do encourage you to submit the Kansas Open Forum comment form by 5 o'clock the day preceding each meeting, so that you can actually share information with the cabinet, either with our panel, either in person and or in writing. And so we would love to be able to hear from you. If you have thoughts, comments, suggestions, etc., we would love to be able to hear from you. But today we have nobody presented to speak. So the first thing on our agenda is to hear about our work groups. And so there were 4 work groups that were identified for our panel to kind of tackle, and things that were identified as part of our Kansas strategic plan, and things that would benefit and help and support our Kansas children and families. Each one of our work groups has put together either recommendations and or is going to give us updates on the work that they've completed so far. And the first group that we're going to hear from is strategy 4.2, and that is to promote family-friendly workplaces throughout the public and private sectors. So who will be giving that presentation?
Hi, this is Bethany Samuel, and I will be presenting for the work group.
All right, Pat, I'll pass it on to you, Bethany. Great.
There we go. All right, sounds good. If you could go ahead and forward to the next slide. So this is the areas that we have been focusing on and looking to address in our work group. Really have been thinking a lot about how we can encourage workplaces across the state of Kansas to embrace the family-friendly mindset. If you go ahead and go to the next slide. This is all of the members that we've been meeting together. We've had some additional meetings outside of the panel to come together and have these discussions, pull together resources, etc. So this is not a completely comprehensive list, obviously, of everything that is available in the state, but these are the main ones that we felt applied to the whole state and that were really strong in their family-friendly work. Of course, we've got K-pop on here. There's the first 1,000 Days Kansas, the Child Care for Business page. A few of these are actually national resources, which could be used to support the work and move it forward as we have this conversation. So these are the dates that we met outside of the panel meetings to try to put our recommendations together, put our heads together, really think through how we're going to approach this, what's the best way to move forward in this tactic. We did look at a lot of different things and had many discussions about it, but I think we'll move on to the recommendations here. So aligning with 4.2.1, we feel like it would be really beneficial if in the state we put together like a one-stop shop where employers or organizations that are working with employers could come and find all of the resources, support, information, background, research, evidence, etc., all in one spot. So we realize and recognize that a lot of work has already been done in this area, that there are many existing programs, such as the ones that we previously listed. But we want to put them all together, make it easy to find and and research and work through, and then of course expand and enhance, if possible, what has already been created and build upon that to really help move the conversation forward. There we go. So we envision this would be a partnership with employers across the state, recognizing that, employers come in a variety of sizes and businesses, and that it looks different for different employers. So we, as a part of that, we want to reach out to other agencies and organizations that work with employers, because we believe that they're the ones who really understand and can speak the language to the employers. The employers already, they have that relationship that's already been established. And so they can help us build upon that relationship, formulate the language in such a way that it's able to really communicate what we're trying to communicate, and then, bring that message forward. So some of the relevant groups we were thinking: Department of Commerce, Labor, Society for Human Resources Management, which would be really helpful for any HR questions that come up, how to implement this and meet all the different legal and regulations that, employers have to think about. So we are recommending that it would also include interactive state map, if possible, that would show, if depending on the location in the state, what are the different services, supports, etc., available in that area. So just to reiterate, these are some of the Kansas programs that are already doing this work. First 1000 Days Kansas.org has been involved in a campaign to start this conversation with employers, and they have been talking about different important topics like paid family leave, maternity and postpartum mother support, and different things like that. Kansas Power of the Positive, or also known as K-pop, they have been creating wonderful resources. There's multiple brochures and flyers and things that can be used. And so that's one thing that can be built upon. Work Well Kansas is about, promoting Kansas well-being in the workplace. So there's resources available there. And then, of course, my personal favorite, because that's what I've been working on for the last few months, is the CCDF consumer education website that we're currently developing. So it's not available yet, but we are developing an employer page, which will go on that site, and it will include some of the resources, the national and local resources. It will include instructions of how an employer could open their own childcare facility, or other family-friendly practices, or how to partner with community organizations and some different aspects like that. So looking forward to when that can be launched. The next recommendation is that all of these components would be brought together to create a business case campaign. So aligning all of the efforts that we already have, building on those strengths, pulling in our partners and those other organizations that have established touch points with employers, and really putting it all together into a campaign to bring that the family-friendly recommendations forward, so that employers not only understand like what it is that we're saying that we recommend, but how that can positively impact their business. Employers may be concerned about their bottom line, how they're going to, deal with staffing and different things like that. But we want to make sure that we bring all these components together and phrase it in such a way that they see that, this could really be beneficial to their business, that it helps promote staff retention and well-being, that helps, employees as they complete their work and they're more efficient. So putting all of the just components together and moving it into a whole campaign. And I think that's, yeah. So are there any questions about any of this?
Questions or comments from any of the panel members? I'd like to first say thank you to everybody for putting together a plan and kind of thinking about where are the gaps, across the state, and how do we better inform businesses and families in terms of like, what does it really mean to have a family-friendly workplace? Do we have any thoughts, questions, et cetera, from anybody on the panel?
This is Hannah White with the Children's Cabinet. Great job. I think that's really a set of wonderful recommendations. I think they're naturally placed within our system. I think they fit well with the vision and the nature of the strategic plan and just the work that we do as a system. So really exciting to see all of those things. I wonder if you guys discussed any implications for how home visitors could kind of play a role in this moving forward, like advocating, collecting information, kind of, interpreting some employee needs in their role, and then be able to actually speak to those needs with employers. I feel like, especially with, essential workforces, it's very difficult to nail down quality employees, like, let's say, public service, so where you're working 12, 16 hours a week. And so to be able to maintain that is very difficult. And a big benefit, I think, to employers that they haven't necessarily recognized yet is the way they can capitalize on, financial incentives, ways that they can reward their employees for, having children, etc. So there's a lot of really cool things that we can do. I'm excited to see your recommendations. Great work, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, we did not discuss home visitors, but I think that's, a great idea. We did talk a lot about needing to bring all the different parties together. So that certainly could fall under that. One thing we did discuss is that K-pop has a survey, like childcare good for business. That's not what it's called, but there is a survey that employers can offer to their employees to help say, what are you looking for? Are we meeting these needs? What are we not meeting? What can we do to help? So that is another possibility. Brenda, if you want to go.
Yeah, thanks. And it's a great question, Hannah, about the role of utilizing people who are on the front lines talking with families and what they hear about employer practices. And I can tell you our organization, the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition, has been working with public health since 2009 to train them on how to advocate for families to the extent that they're able, and then when to refer families if they're not receiving support from their employer. If there's a federal law that might be addressed, might be implicated in that, who to contact, if it's just family-friendly, not just, but family-friendly policies and practices, how to really make that business case for it. So I feel that we have these connections already in place with many of the home visiting programs and the community health workers that could easily be activated to connect with this statewide resource.
Great, thank you, Emily.
To kind of go along with what Brenda was talking about, like those on the front lines, I think there would be providers who would be willing to explain to business leaders what it does, like let's take illness, child illness as just an example, like what happens in the care facility when parents send their child, do, things like, dose and drop out of desperation that, they can't miss any more work. Either they're not going to get paid or they're at risk of getting, fired or laid off. And so they send their children ill to preschool, daycare, childcare center, whichever environment they're utilizing. And what happens when that goes on, and relate that to the economic effect of what is going on. I think sometimes business leaders don't understand the reason why providers have to say no is because just a cough or your teething fever all of a sudden becomes catching, and it can take an entire month to get one little virus out of a facility. And so I think that's another thing. I know providers would be willing to step alongside families to help explain, like, listen, your employee is not whining. Your employee is telling you a fact of the reality of what happens when kids, have this or that go on in care facilities.
I see, Hannah, you had your hand up. No. Okay.
Thanks,
I-
Brenda. I would just, yes, this is Hannah White again, Children's Cabinet. I would just say that I think the reason I would advocate for the strategy of dealing with the employee is the employer's interest in this case is getting their employee to work. And so they may not, although they should be concerned, or, people in general should be concerned about the well-being of our childcare providers and the burnout. I think that intrinsically we can motivate our, no, I understand, Emily. I think we can motivate our commerce infrastructure to see the benefit of using existing structures to weave in family-friendly workplaces. For example, we know that Gen Z, millennials, generations after are probably going to have different interests for what their benefit package looks like. So maybe they're more interested in childcare benefits, or and the payroll tax credit that comes from that for the employer. Maybe they care more about that than the actual traditional health insurance package. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of options. We just have to think about leveraging the interests of the business, of the employer, to motivate them to see their employee as valuable.
And
Brenda?
this is Brenda Benny, and this will be my last comment. Brenda Benny with the Kansas Breastfeeding Coalition. And I echo what Emily and Hannah has said. In our work group, time and time again, the business case came up over and over again. We recognize no matter how this is packaged together, what the final product is, it has to speak to the businesses around the business language. We can do case studies, we can do storytelling like Emily was talking about, putting all the pieces together for them. But at the end of the day, they're in business to be in business. And we have to connect the dots for them about why this is impactful for them as a business. And we think the Children's Cabinet is in the best place to be able to put that picture together for them. And it really does have to center around that business case.
Agreed. Okay, so I love the conversation, and so this is obviously something that means a lot, right, to people who are here on this panel, right, because we know it will make a huge difference. And so Melissa did have an opportunity to review this recommendation. Was very excited, about the recommendations that were given. What she's asked is that really what happens next is that we give her the opportunity to kind of help with maybe some wordsmithing, to making to some connections. Like Brenda, you mentioned, how do we connect to maybe some of like the commerce, et cetera, all of those entities that are directly representing the workforce, so that we actually include them as part of the discussion before we put together something that officially goes to the cabinet for review, or for approval. And so So Melissa has, volunteered to kind of make some connections, but also help in the wordsmithing of this so that it's actually presented to the cabinet as something that has been fleshed out, so that it's not leaving work to be done to the cabinet, but we already have kind of a plan in place and connections already in place. Does that sound good to everyone? And Melissa, was there anything more that I needed to add that, or just thumbs up if I spoke for you correctly? And I think we're good there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll just thank everyone for the work that's gone into it. I think, there are super good ideas here. Just a few more questions that you probably, judging from some of the information in the slides that aren't conveyed in the written recommendation. I think that's where we have some work we can do together to pull this into that next level form where there's a productive recommendation to take forward. So I'm excited to spend some time working with y'all.
Okay, very good. Next, we have tactic 6.1.1. It is the workforce compensation and benefits group. And so, Logan, will you be doing the presentation for this group? And if not, do we know who will be doing the presentation for this group?
If we need to come back to it, I can always just jump ahead in the slides too. So that is an option.
Okay.
This is Trisha. I think maybe jump ahead and come back.
Hey, I'm also on the work group, and so I can go on ahead and just talk, if needed, but I'll give Logan a chance to, I'll see if I can message him and see what's going on. And so let's go on ahead and move to the next one and then come back to this. Okay, so we're doing tactic 615, and this is to document and address recruitment and retention challenges. And that includes all early care and education professionals. And so we go on ahead and hear from this group, please.
Yeah, this is Amy Gottchammer with Googles of Learning, and I've been the group lead for this particular tactic. So there was a lot of brainstorming. we read a number of articles on the topic, and in particular, it was very hard to kind of weed out the benefit and wage, the full compensation package piece, because that was something that the other group was looking at. Because when you're talking about recruitment and retention, it so often just comes right back to the money and the compensation, the benefits, right? So we had to really kind of keep pushing that to the side and say, what else is left? Okay, so next slide. Okay, so these are our work group members. All right, so we just kept asking ourselves those questions: what will increase it, what will decrease it? And so we found really that there were some overarching themes, and they had to do with how we can change the perception of the work we do. How does it appear to the society at large? When you talk to people across Kansas, whether they're families or business leaders or anybody else, how does their perception of the work that the provider does impact recruitment and retention? How can we improve the mental health supports of current providers, again with that eye towards keeping them and recruiting them, helping them feel like professionals, providing them opportunities for advancement, because that leads towards feeling more like a professional, and just that general feeling of wanting to feel respected. So many of them just feel like babysitters, glorified babysitters. So these are sort of some general feelings and themes that we kept coming up with as we read articles and discussed. We even found some points in these articles that talked about while money was important, the benefits didn't matter as much. The people would stay at a location if there was a sort of a great culture, a professional culture, a culture of respect within the program. Those kinds of things really did weigh heavily in a person's decision to stay at a program. So what could we do about some of those things? So go ahead to the next slide. So we came up, this is just several of the different ideas we discussed. We looked at membership, mentorship structures, and not that some of these haven't been discussed at length before. Involvement in marketing campaigns. Part of this was, we know there is already discussions going on, perhaps in alignment with the rollout of all the other new things that are going to be happening by the end of the year, right? With the career pathway and everything else. Is there already, if there is already marketing campaigns that will be happening, is there some role that we could play in our group in an advisory capacity where we might be able to have some involvement in messaging or something regarding recruitment and retention? So that was an idea we bandied around. We looked at CAIM endorsements because of that reflective supervision piece, that it might be a way to kind of lean into mentoring, but that having those endorsements that offered those professional opportunities, being able to say, well, I have this endorsement, might make them feel more like a professional, might make them feel more respected, might make them feel like they want to stay in the field. We looked at sub-pools, maybe in particular in communities that already have pools that are sub-pools that are already stood up in those communities, specifically earmarked for family childcare providers to help enable them to participate in professional boards, because they so frequently can't get out of their programs, right? Because they're the only one there. They can't do it during the day. So, how can we provide them an opportunity, again, to be a professional, to be working at these higher levels with their colleagues, and so we looked at these sub pools, but in the discussions, we discussed how some of them don't exist in any communities. So maybe we can start to see if we can support maybe just ones that already exist as a jumping off point. So that was another discussion. All right, next slide. We discussed if there was possibility of some alignment between the McCormick National Director's credential and the KSAYC state level director's credential in the career pathway, just as another way, again, that feeling of being a professional, earning these endorsements and credentials just to induce recruitment and retention. However, we've had some more discussions about it. They really are two distinctly different animals. So it's not at all sure that there is a real possibility for alignment between them. We looked at creating a mental health toolkit for providers and directors. Again, if we can reduce the stress that they feel when they're in an environment, hopefully we can retain them longer. It is a hard job. So what can we do? What resources and suggestions could we provide for them? Is this something as a group that we could somehow put together, gather all of these resources from somewhere and give them these suggestions so that they can maybe retain their staff longer? We looked at the possibility that DCF is working already. They've got some programs, or rather some funding that they're using. And I hope I don't mess up the verbiage here. There's specific language, I know, but they've got add-on payments and differential payments that go to facilities. Some have to do with specific populations. So an add-on payment might be for a program that cares for a special needs child, for example. They may have differential payments that go for a Head Start program, for example, for program quality. So some of the thoughts we were having on that was, is there a way to leverage a program that already exists? Specifically, we were thinking through program quality that could be spread or expanded across more programs, maybe using some of the same higher level Head Start program qualifications, whatever they have to meet the Head Start quality standards. But again, some of those things, in a program, a high quality program, they already seem to bear out that they do retain staff longer. And some of these, being able to get more money, more funding into a program like this, increasing the quality to a program like this, allows for maybe hiring more people so that you can have better ratios, right? Reduce the stress on the existing providers in the classroom. Maybe you get another staff member in there so a lead teacher can get out and get some plan time on a regular basis, rather than having to plan after hours at home on the weekends, things like that. So again, all hoping to reduce the stress level in the classroom and increase retention. So this is not at all a surefire thing. We liked it because it seemed like it was something that was maybe already started in some form, and there was an agency to already go talk to, but they've already got something that they're working on, and as always, funding is limited. So it's not at all sure that this is anything that's going to go anywhere, but we just discussed it, and so we would like to follow it a little bit further and see. But they've got very specific things they're looking at, specific populations like unhoused populations and at-risk children and things like that. So and I know they could use some help perhaps with determining what kind of criteria they use to determine what a program might need to do in order to qualify for this extra funding. But we need to just have some more meetings. So anyway, that's kind of where that discussion was going. So lots and lots of ideas, lots and lots of discussion. So next slide. Other than what I just said, going through and documenting what these challenges were and addressing some possible solutions, we came up with huge whiteboards and notes and lists, and we're going to work on a spreadsheet, which is on the next slide, I think, our next step. So we talked about following the DCF idea a little bit further, only because, as I said, there was an actual agency to go to. The other ideas were a little bit more nebulous, and we didn't see that there was a specific path to follow yet. So this one seemed like one that we could at least follow, even if it is to its natural end and it doesn't go anywhere, so be it. But we thought, well, let's at least follow it through to the end. And then we can go somewhere else. Maybe the one with the marketing might be another one we could also look at, because there's at least some certainty that marketing will happen. And we could align with that because it will happen with the career pathway coming up over the next several months. So that might be something else to look at next. But our next step really will be developing this spreadsheet of all of the current recruitment and retention challenges that we did identify, and the solutions that we have brainstormed, and put that all into a great big spreadsheet, because it is way too much for our group to ever possibly do. And so what we would like to see is that this could be something for the future use of other groups or organizations, that somehow this work could live somewhere and not end up buried on someone's hard drive, that if at all possible, it could remain front and center somehow, somewhere, that people can pick off of it and say, ooh, that's something we could do. Hey, let's run with that. If possible. And I don't know what that would look like or where that would go, but that's just the first step is going to be developing this spreadsheet of ideas and getting it all together. And then maybe somebody will have some ideas for us about where that can live and how we could maybe promote it, so that people could think, how could they contribute to the overall project? And I think that was perhaps our last slide. Oh, yeah. And just, is there anyone else you would like to see at the table? In general, you always want to make sure you've got everybody at the table, but it'll also depend a little bit on which project we're talking about at any given time. So that's all I've got. Any questions? Did I leave anything out, group members?
I mean, that was great, great information. And I love that you, when we look at recruitment retention, we typically go to pay, right? But I love that you expanded that definition, because it's more than just pay, right? And so, and I appreciate, all of the work that you did in identifying all of those gaps. And so, do we have any comments, questions, thoughts, et cetera, from anyone on the panel?
Yeah, Emily.
First of all, that every single item that you mentioned is amazing. And so I don't have words. I can't find the right word to describe what I'm feeling right now, which is, I don't know that anybody has experienced that with me. Thank you for that work. I think that, that sums up a lot of what the workforces need. Yes, we do feel like we need to be treated like professionals and seen as professionals. And, I've never sat on a baby, so treat me like the professional that I am. So I love the idea of focusing, DCF is a system that already exists. Let's not create new wheels when we have some to already utilize. So I do think that that's the right idea. Providers have been, at least family providers, and I can't speak for center-based workforce, but at least providers in family environments have been begging for the ability to follow something along the lines of a mentorship program that somehow reimburses us, whether it's through clock hours or whatever, like I have spent time in mentorship situations where I got a small stipend, but I still had to go do my other training on top of it when the state wouldn't recognize that actually what I did was very valuable professional development for myself. And so the CAIM endorsements, I'm involved in that, and I am loving my experience with it. So I would say, please keep this in mind, keep these things going as we cycle into the next panel term. I would love to see that these topics, maybe we start with the DCF recommendation like you have, because that's the quickest system that we can get moving through. But please, as a group, I'm asking the panel, what was presented is important and valuable, and I do believe would be received well, because it does go towards everything that we're trying to establish for ourselves.
Thank you, Emily. We'll do our best.
Any other comments, thoughts, etc.? Oh, well, thank you again for all of the work. I think that we can tell just, Emily, and your passion in response to this work, I think just kind of highlights the importance of it, right? And why, why this is needed. And so, I loved seeing that. And, don't usually see you without words. And so, but that means something, right? That's a good thing. I mean, that's actually an amazing feeling. So that's a good thing. And so, thank you again, and look forward to, as we resume this next year, continuing dialogue, discussion, and whatnot of the groups. And what I'm hearing is that we still have work to be done. And so this work will continue as we kind of put together the spreadsheet, hopefully for maybe a lot of different organizations to feed off of, to pick ideas or whatnot, and things that they can do. And so that's great. Thank you. Okay, so the next group will be Tactic 712. That is the zoning and other regulations that impact the operations of childcare businesses. And so who will be presenting for this work group?
I actually will be. This is Emily Barnes. Okay, so I'm Emily Barnes, and was a part of Tactic 712 for zoning. Will you guys be moving the slides for me? This is the work group. We had Eldana Chestnut, so we had, kind of some licensing end. We had CCR&R, and we were able to have some really good discussion, and Lee Tran was able to kind of help join in from DCF. So we were able to really talk about the experience of what is going on. And it helped that as we were beginning to get really focused, we had the situation where Wichita was able to make some strides forward with some of their city ordinances, which was able to help facilitate some of our conversations. So if we can go to the next slide real quick. So the background information on the situation that we're looking at is that there are zoning ordinances around the state in different entities, whether it's county-based, city-based, things like that, that these restrictions actually act as a barrier to many family childcare providers. Childcare, it does affect the centers, and we do need to be mindful of that. But many of the city ordinances actually specifically affect family childcare and group home childcare operation. And it's been a problem. The planners, whether it's city or county based, don't always consider the impact of what that does to us and how it can actually change our operation. I don't live in the town that I would prefer to have lived in, because that town has restrictions on the way that I could utilize my license. And so I now live in a different town, conveniently close by, but it impacted my operation of my business. The zoning regulations often have a disparate impact on the income of our occupant. Usually it's the home childcare provider. So for instance, a city may stipulate that you can only have a certain number of children in the home. And that also includes your own children. So now all of a sudden you can't fully utilize your state license. And what we opted to do this year was only address the zoning regulations. We were charged with looking at zoning and HOA issues. However, as we began to dig in, just a simple scratch on the surface, we realized that the HOA topic is much larger, simply because there's not as much in the way of regulation of HOA operations. And we didn't have as clear a path in the amount of time that we had available to us to really feel like we understood that topic enough to make tangible change. So we opted to recommend that HOA continue to be a topic as we go forward. However, we would put our focus on zoning. So we can go to the next slide. So what we did do was that we reviewed zoning information around the state. We gathered just, basically internet searches. A lot of it came from Johnson County, but also other entities, basically, some members, we reached out to the GO team, the Kansas GO team, to kind of pull in, some of those resources as well. And we began to pull what ordinances were in different areas. And so then, made a very large spreadsheet to help us kind of get a feel for it. We discussed creating a crosswalk of zoning information. So like on this spreadsheet, there were different, categories for what different ordinances would do for people in operation. And then we requested that a survey be sent out to childcare providers statewide regarding what providers understand about the ordinances and regulations, what they have experienced, things like that. And that went out in mid-May. It was created at the top of May and was released mid-May, finished at the end of May. And so we're in the process, we're actually set to meet next week to discuss the findings. Those are all being processed so that we can have a good understanding of what's going on. Some of it where I was actually a part of creating the survey, and part of what I had wanted really to understand is, what was it that, was perceived to be a barrier that was being blamed on licensing, when in fact it was a city ordinance? Was there understanding of the difference there? What were the impacts? I personally had felt the impact of different city ordinances. What impact was being felt? Is there, a pocket of the state that's seeing this, or is this statewide? Is it affecting your recruitment and retention? Things like that. We researched the American Planning Association for links to childcare. And so, that is one of the long-term goals, is to kind of align with, how do we work with, that type of paradigm there. And then we discussed how to gather information on the HOAs, that also is a factor in this. We know that has to be a much longer focused topic going on, because it does have a negative effect on childcare. They do have the ability to shut down providers. And even within the last 12 months, there have been providers in our state who have been forced to close programs because of their HOAs. If we can go forward again. So our recommendations would be to work with the statewide GO team and the Children's Cabinet to reduce zoning restrictions and have that be a priority issue. We do feel like it is important to get a true understanding of the different zoning ordinances, why they're on the books and what can be done about them. How necessary are those ordinances, and what can we do to make strides forward? We're recommending that we take collaborative effort to work with the American Planning Association regarding policy work, so that way then effective policy can go into place, where we don't have situations where cities, there may be reasons why the ordinances are on the books. And so we're going to try to be respectful of that, but that we also need, strong, solid business operation on our end as well. Collaborative work we would like to undertake by these groups with larger developers to plan and create model zoning regulations that are childcare friendly. So if the city has let's say, traffic maintenance, road maintenance, things like that, let's collaborate, let's understand the needs of the different city, state, county, or city or county, entity, why that might be on there, and what can we do to make it more childcare friendly, so that way we can have effective businesses going on. All right, we can go forward. Our next steps are that next week we're set to meet so that we can review the findings of the survey and see, you know, what answers that gives to us. We want to create talking points for providers and advocates to utilize when we are talking with city planners, city councils, and, you know, other entities, you know, legislators, you know, situations like that. That way, then we can effectively communicate what the, not just the problem, but the plan. You know, how are we planning to go forward, and what do we want to see as a solution? We would like to consider, we would ask the next step is consider zoning and childcare regulations crosswalk creation. So like, where can we come together and find these areas that we can, you know, make strides, and, you know, maybe we have, you know, a general business ordinance, but that there are exceptions made for family childcare operation, things like that. And then we will continue to look at researching HOAs and the best way to gather information from there. You know, one of the things was determined that, you know, everybody on the work group intended to remain on the panel next year. And so we all felt that that would be a good topic going forward. It just is a very large topic and we need more time. And that it may also involve more reach out to other collaboration. Go ahead. So then from there, just, you know, other suggestions on how we can impact zoning restrictions. Like I said, you know, in the process of getting to this place, Wichita managed to make very good tangible success. And that is one of the situations that we are kind of looking at is, you know, how do we utilize that situation to continue making success that is beneficial to the cities and to the family child care provider, the business operator. And then if anybody has any insight on where we start with HOA, that'd be lovely. And that's what I have. I think we do have one for, you know, motion, like as an optional slide, but does anybody have any questions or comments?
This is Tanya Bullock, Child Start. My only comment, if you haven't, it you know, it did take a while for the Wichita ordinance to pass through.
Right.
We're still waiting for the actual final
Yeah.
results, but you probably won't get far if you don't involve some of your local government officials and get advocates for you, because the way we got in the door was through one of our council members who really just helped us get in. And
Right.
otherwise it was difficult.
Yes.
And I have no clue with the HOA, so I can't help with that. But I may look into that too, because we're seeing those issues here with homes that can't be licensed just because the HOA doesn't want to worry about parking and having things like that. So that's some of the research I've done too, but I don't know where to go from there except attending meetings, and you know. So,
right.
Good luck. I'm excited for that.
Thank you.
Some other organizations to possibly connect with would be like the League of Kansas Municipalities, and then also looking at the Kansas Association of Counties, so that you maybe have the larger group of city and county, you know, there to be able to talk about kind of how this works. And so those may be two other, you know, large groups that we can kind of pull into the discussion to be able to help, you know, guide this work. You know, it's kind of good timing as KDHE is working on crafting and revising their rules and regs. You know, to maybe also include, you know, that in the work, in the conversation, you know, because somehow maybe that can play a role in helping this kind of move forward. Again, this is another one of the issues where Melissa did have an opportunity to glimpse at the recommendation of the group. And there's, you know, a lot of low-hanging fruit here in terms of things that we might be able to kind of, you know, partner with and put some things in place, you know, maybe sooner than some of the other recommendations or whatnot that's here. And again, she is happy to make connections or whatnot as needed to be able to help move this along before we have, and again, helping with the wordsmithing of whatever the recommendation needs to be before it actually goes to the full cabinet.
Agreed. Thank you. That would be wonderful.
Cornelia, this is Melissa. I would just offer that I think it's important to understand the comprehensive review of the state level licensing rules and regs involves a crosswalk that is looking at where local restrictions are tighter than what the state requires. So we don't need to duplicate effort, because that is a piece of it, is how do our state level rules and regs interact with federal rules, with fire safety rules, with local rules, so that we do the work the state can control with its own licensing rules and regs. Obviously, safety, health and safety of kids is top of mind, but we want to find ways to eliminate or limit the barriers that being out of alignment with each other creates. So where there is something that the state could consider that helps make one less step, if possible, that is part of the frame of the review, is how do we help streamline and help providers navigate that process. I think the things the panel can continue to hone in on are best practices and recommendations, because those organizations Cornelia mentioned, I think would benefit from having some input. Constitutionally in the state of Kansas, our state constitution enshrines home rule. And so that is local government decision making. There was a city council member who made childcare issues, as Tanya mentioned, her personal mission, and helped champion. So she was a community champion. When I think about groups like the city and county organizations, or the Kansas Association of School Boards, where education issues are concerned, those groups offer guidance, they offer advice. They're not a voice for saying this is how you must do things. So League of Cities and Association of Counties, they don't know what best practices are for childcare. So if we could focus panel effort on creating a guide to best practices, I think that is an approach that would help the other entities involved understand how they're creating conflict that makes it harder to solve issues that they're simultaneously flagging as an important issue for their community. So that's where I would love to see the panel focus. I think it can lend itself to, in terms of the HOAs, I made a call to my brother last night. He's an attorney. He lives in Missouri, not Kansas. He's on his Homes Association review board. And I just wanted to gauge, when can an association rule over, like, when does that how does that supersede state level rules and regs or statute or federal law or whatever? And he said, at heart, they can't, because they're not they're not a layer of governance that supersedes state law. So that is a situation, I think best effort might be to help create some guidance for individual providers to work with their own homes association when there is a conflict between what is required of them to operate a childcare business anywhere else and what the association is saying, so that they can work through the process that exists to ask for special permission, or challenge the association to think about the rule that's impacting them, or whatever it may be. I think in both cases, some best practice documents would be the most helpful, because we already the state agency work that's happening and the Go team work has properly been identified as already going on. So we would benefit, I think, if the panel had input, that is what this panel exists to provide, because you all are folks who represent practitioners with practical experience and technical expertise. You're the subject matter experts that can help inform the process in a lot of different ways. So that would be my ask of you, is to focus time and energy. Maybe the work group can put some things together for the full panel to consider, and how, work on refining those types of guiding documents that can be used to help inform. Child Care Aware has the Communities in Action project as well. They are well positioned to bring a best practice guide to a community conversation.
Thank you. I wrote some of that down so I can take that back to the work group.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Thank
Hey,
you.
Emily, this is Hannah White with the Children's Cabinet. I would also say some of this reminds me of the work that Lucas Neese is doing in helping childcare providers learn how to advocate for themselves through the legislative process. So learning about who their representatives are. And so there might actually be some resources that he's already created that would kind of be in line, or maybe could leverage some of the volume over there to help put together these artifacts as far as advocating with your local HOA. Because I think it's, Thrive is doing a lot of this is how you speak to this person, this is how you navigate this conversation, these are the parameters.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's good. And luckily, I think it was in May, we had a good conversation on the Go team, and Lucas was involved in that, where we were able to discuss this, zoning topic. And I anticipate that it will remain a good a topic to be addressed. I wasn't able to be at the June Go team meeting, and I still need to catch up on that info. But yes, and I agree with all of that info, and so I appreciate that, and I will take that back to the work group and see where it develops. And I know, like, one of our—
Oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Not Lucas. Logan Stensing.
Logan,
I am
yeah.
so sorry.
Oh yeah, and Logan does a great job with teaching providers how to—
Yes, I did not mean Lucas.
Yes.
I apologize.
And one of the efforts in this was, the couple of months and weeks that we felt like that was crucial to be like just gathering the information and figuring out what the actual topic was, because like one of the things that we did discuss was that we felt like it was important to have the survey results back in a timely way, so that then that could actually be a part of the conversation of the regulation, the KDHE regulation review, that we wanted to find out from providers what their experience was, so that way then as the regulation review continued forward and we learned what was being offered up as review, we would have that information and then be able to crosswalk it and section through where the topics are that, hey, we need to assess this. So I feel really good about the feedback we're getting, and I'm looking forward to see where we take it.
Tricia?
Yeah, this is Tricia Wagoner. I think Colorado actually passed a law that prevents HOAs, or are you familiar with that, from being prohibited or from making childcare against the rules of the HOA? I don't think any other state has besides Colorado. And this is just something like, but I just thought of that, and I was wondering if we have any interest here in Kansas in looking at something similar.
I really appreciate that. I had not heard about it, but that is the type of information we're looking for. Is what what precedents are already out there that we could utilize. And that might actually be the key to figuring out how we go forward, because, you know, one of the topics, you know, in Johnson County alone, there are hundreds of HOAs. And so just trying to figure out, you know, we knew that they weren't, you know, a true legal entity that, you know, supersedes, you know, state laws, but yet they seem to. And that was, you know, felt like before we made recommendations, we needed to understand the situation fully. And so that's a really helpful place to start. Thank you.
Let me see if I can find out more information and I'll email you.
Great. Do we have any other comments, thoughts, etc.? Thank you, thank you, Emily, for for presenting, and again, meaningful discussion in terms of kind of next steps. And a lot of people don't realize how this impacts businesses. Where you choose to live, determines what your income for your household, etc. And I love the nugget about being able to help our providers advocate more for themselves when it comes to the HOA, and how do we do all of that, but also maybe looking at what other states have done, like the Colorado, for example. So that's perfect. Logan is actually traveling and is having some audio difficulties. And so he's not able to get audio to work. So do we have anybody else from group 611 who would like to volunteer to present on behalf of the work group? Is there anybody who would like to say, yes, I will do it? Okay, and so I will go on ahead and do that. I was on this work group, and so please, everyone, feel free to hop on if there's something that I'm forgetting or that you would like to add, for the discussion. And so, yes. So our group talked about our task was to really kind of assess and look at the landscape for workforce compensation and benefits. The first thing that we wanted to do as a group was really define compensation. And what do we mean by compensation and benefits? And so we came up with kind of maybe some guidance and things that kind of helped us in terms of guiding our conversation. And that's that equality workforce compensation benefits in early child education refer to a competitive pay and benefits package that meets the needs of educators, aligns with other professional fields, and ensures continual growth through quality-based metrics and incentivizing professional development, providing a clear career pathway with graduated compensation and benefits, securing sustainable funding through public and private intervention, and investing in a well-funded professional development system with the capacity to support career pathways and quality improvement initiatives. Next slide. These were the members that were on our work group, and we did have some great conversation, but also realized a lot of challenges in being able to really come up with recommendations for various reasons, which we'll discuss further. So next slide. Some of the challenges and barriers that are the reasons why this work group exists. We know that there's high turnover in the early child education workforce, which also then is also leading to recruitment challenges because in part, not just because of the stuff that was identified earlier in the previous work group, but compensation and benefits definitely plays a part in that. There is a lack of career pipeline and growth opportunities within our field. And so usually when you're looking at early care and education, you can go from an assistant to a lead, but it's very difficult to move up further, from that. And so as you kind of improve in terms of your education, can you be paid more for education, et cetera, even though you're in the similar position? And so again, how do we incentivize more than for that professional development and growth? Current revenue does not enable programs to sustain pay for quality. And so there is no current revenue source that actually provides the funds needed to pay for quality. And we know that because Kansas is working on, what is the cost of quality and what does that need? And so we don't have the ability to sustain the quality workforce that we need. And as a result, unfortunately, access to quality care is being impacted by all of this. Because if you can't find the workforce, we don't have the slots available for children and families. And so this is something that we have to figure out across our state, unfortunately across the nation, but for us across the state, this is something that we definitely have to figure out because it's impacting the availability of care for our children. Next slide. So we've held our inner meetings between our panel meetings to discuss any current resources or research that's existed. We looked at what other states have done themselves to try to address this. We tried to kind of dig into a little bit of the compensation benefits landscapes that exist, but there was a lot of data that was missing in terms of us being able to really look at, well, how much do people really make right now, especially compared to other industries. And so we definitely identified gaps in data that limit our ability to develop specific measurable compensation and benefits recommendations. We didn't know that our role should be, one that says all child care providers should make a minimum of $15 an hour as an assistant teacher. Like that wasn't our task was not necessarily to come up with the dollar amount, more than, really identify maybe the need to further evaluate what does the compensation really need to be, what is that range, and does that vary by community, et cetera. And so there is some additional work that is happening across the state that we want to be able to connect with. Next slide, please. And so we want to actually connect with other relevant work groups that are working on this. For example, the Kansas Cost of Quality Project, as we're looking at the cost of quality, how did compensation and benefits actually pan out in that discussion with quality? And is it there? And if so, what metric are they using to determine what that range needs to be? Because, part of our concern is, well, if we're trying to figure out, how to fix this, we need to really know, well, what is the answer? How much should people be making? And who should really be making that decision? And we didn't know that was us, that really needed to be making that decision. But is it already part of the work that's already happening in the state? We didn't want to duplicate efforts. If there's something that's already happening across the state, but how do we build off that research? We do know that the Early Childhood Transitions Task Force is having community engagement sessions that are coming up that we'll talk about at the end of our meeting. So this is definitely an opportunity for the workforce to go and talk about, the need for higher compensation and benefits, and that being something that we want the state to address and to be able to consider. And so, we would definitely like that to put on the forefront of people's conversations. So we do believe that the work should continue. We don't have a formal recommendation just yet. We have, a lot of data that we still need to pull to be able to come up with a recommendation that's meaningful, but we did have some good conversation. And so that is, I believe that's the end of that slide. Is that correct? There's nothing more. So I'll open it up to any compensation or benefits related questions or whatnot. Are there other groups that we need to be connecting with, and anything else that we need to consider as we continue this work within our work group? Thoughts, comments from others?
This is Amy Gotchamer. I have a quick question that just might help guide our group. So we talked a lot in terms of recruitment and retention about the earning credentials and additional things like that. So what I'm envisioning, one thing I was thinking about was if they did earn something like that, and we brought back something like the teach and wages programs where they could get some funding for doing the additional education. But then does that fall under compensation? Or, some sort, would it be a 6.11 or would it be a 6.15? Like if we were to follow teaching wages through to see if we could bring something like that back, would that be your group or our group?
You know, that's actually a really good question, Amy. And one of the things that we talked about is, you know, do we need to have two groups? You know, really, is it time maybe when we look at, you know, next year and putting together our work groups or whatnot, is it better for us to be together at the table, you know, and talk, because there's compensation, benefits, recruitment, retention, all of that, and, you know, large enough, you know, subject matter that it would actually be good for all of us to be in this, in the same room where it happens, and, you know, and having the same conversations or whatnot, you know, versus having two separate work groups in terms of, is this us or is this them? And so maybe it's neither an either or, but it's all of us together trying to figure that out.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, or, you know, or maybe it's we work together separately some of the time and then come together once a quarter or something like that. And yeah, I agree with that. That sounds like a good idea.
Any other thoughts, comments, etc.? Emily?
So kind of to the point, I do see that there is a benefit of both and, but also somewhat separately, like Amy was saying. Yes, there are topics that are different. It does seem almost as if the compensation answer, it's always going to be based on where the funding comes from. You know, when it's decided that it's important enough to invest in this field, and that's kind of a federal type thing. I think we would be able to look at more answers on this. The ultimate question is that this is a money issue, and whose money is it that provides the answer? Is it the parents' money? Is it the provider's money? Or is it a different funding source? And so, you know, so I think that's another thing that's ultimately going to factor in. Yes, I do see that they do go hand in hand. I truly appreciate that the effort was put forth to separate them so that we could actually get a reasonably clear understanding of where they work separately. But I do think it is appropriate to ask, you know, how do they work together as well?
Right. Amy?
Yeah, this is Amy Gotchamer again. So that's where I have this chicken and egg thing in my head where I keep thinking, you know, people don't value the work we do, so we don't get the funding, but we won't get the funding until people value what we do. So we've got this whole issue going on, right? So in my head, one of the really important things is changing that perception of the work we do, which, you know, as far as the topics that we've discussed, I really point at that marketing campaign and what we can do with that piece while we're already talking about marketing the rest. So that's one thing that I think we could prioritize, perhaps, because if people think that what we do is important, whether it's business leaders or state level government or whatever, and Emily's right, a lot of it has to come from the feds, but whatever we can do at our level, in any case, to change people's minds about the important work we do, can bring that funding in. So I think that that's just a really important piece of the puzzle.
Any other comments? Okay, if not, then it was great actually hearing the updates from all of the committees. You know, it's great to, you know, to see movement, and if nothing else, you know, we've had conversations, we've had meaningful dialogue and conversations, you know, and have, you know, maybe outlined some paths of things that we need to maybe kind of look further into as we try to help find solutions and you know, strategies that we can put in place to be able to better support our providers, better support the workforce, and better support our Kansas children and families. So thank you all for the work that you've done within your work groups. And I look forward to further conversation as we return next year, you know, and kind of move these all to the next level. So next on our agenda is to talk about the Kansas Early Childhood Transition Task Force Community Engagement Tours. So you're all are aware that Governor Kelly has implemented a early childhood transitions task force with the goal of really consolidating, combining all of the early childhood programs and services into one umbrella, into one you know, state agency. And so what we're going to be doing is going going across the state. There are going to be 9 different cities across the state that we're going to discuss the challenges and successes, that affect early childhood, the sectors in each community. These meetings are open to the public, and we want participants to really actively engage in conversation and give meaningful information to the representatives that are at the task force meeting. We'll have leaders from the Hunt Institute, who are the ones that are guiding the Kansas plan as we work on creating, this new state level position. And so our first meetings are going to take place on Tuesday, June 27th at 9 o'clock and 2 o'clock. You can see the locations for each of the meetings. They'll be the 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th. So that last week of June, there'll be this tour that's happening across the state. We'd like you to please mark your calendars and have an opportunity, find a place where you can plug in, to as many meetings as you can go to. We want to hear your voice. And so, there may be times that are difficult for providers to attend, but hopefully, you can find people that can speak on your behalf. If there aren't meetings that occur like in the evenings, for you to attend, but please find, someone that can come and share information because we want to get as much information as we can from the community as the state is trying to come up with and develop its plan. And so again, here's information for the tours. There were press releases that were sent out about this as well. And if you have any questions or need more information, please reach out to me. I can help as much as I can. So our upcoming meetings, our next meeting is July the 21st. And you can see, our meeting schedule. And so for the 23-24 school year, take a screenshot of this, but Lindsay has already sent out the meeting makers or whatnot for it. So we already have it on our calendars. But for those of you who are watching, virtually watching the live stream, this again is the meeting schedule for our 23-24 panel meetings. So bright spots, panel members, we're inviting you to share any bright spots that are happening within your organization or your community. So who would like to go first?
Sonia Bullock.
Go for it.
I wanted to share, I wasn't going to, but I had a very timely phone call yesterday with the Boston Globe. A reporter from the Boston Globe is looking into their childcare and workforce crisis, which, it's timely because we just presented 4.2, which is engaging employers and childcare providers. And they are looking to do a mini series and use Kansas as one of the model states to look after to see if what they can learn and share back with their legislature and folks out there in Massachusetts. So I sent some other contacts out, but I haven't asked if anybody is interested in speaking with the reporter. She's looking to ask questions about what we're doing, either from state officials, local officials, leaders in the community who are working to address and try and solve the crisis by engaging employers. So if anybody is interested, you can reach out to me and I'll share her information. And she's also hoping to stop by sometime this summer to make some more connections. So that was kind of exciting. At first I thought it was fake, and then I Googled her and she's real.
That's great, Tanya. Thank you. Any other bright spots? Amy?
This is Amy Gottjammer. I'll just share that we're coming up on our 15-year anniversary at Googles of Learning. So I'm just excited about that. We're having a big birthday party this weekend, tomorrow, actually. And so we've sent out over 800 invites to all of our former families and staff from over the years to come and join us. And we've got food trucks coming, and we've got a local company that does a pop-up playground where they come out and they bring all of these loose parts and they put them out on the playground, like giant wooden spools, like cables would come off of, and pool noodles and cloth and all kinds of stuff. And the kids just get to go out and build forts and play superheroes and do whatever they want with it. So we're going to have cake and, just have a little birthday party. So, so we're excited about it. Just can't believe we've done 15 years already. We blinked. So anyway, that's my exciting news for today. So thank you.
Well, congratulations on 15 years. That's amazing. That's wonderful. Melissa.
Thank you. I just wanted to let everyone know that as of July 1st, Communities in Schools of Mid-America will be SparkWheel. Spark, WHEEL, all one word. And our website will be sparkwheel.org. We are disaffiliating with our national network that we have been with since our inception. Still love them dearly. But we believe that we will be better positioned to do our work in ways that it really works here in Kansas and the other states we're in, if we have the freedom to set the standards and implement the types of services we know work best here. So my official, organization name will be changing July 1. My email address will still be good. They're both actually open right now and coming in no matter how it's sent, but I'll get my contact information updated.
Thank you for letting us know of the change, Reagan. Any other bright spots? Okay, if there are none, well, thank you guys for all the bright spots. And so as a reminder, if in fact you would like to have information added to our agenda, there is a place on our panel SharePoint hub for you to actually include agenda items, recommendations, etc. There is an agenda resource form that is available there. So if you have something that you think would be meaningful or good discussion or whatnot, please, feel free to utilize that form. I'd like to thank all of our outgoing panel members, for their service. As we know, everybody had to submit applications. Some people have chosen not to reapply, either because they're moving on, in other positions, or they have other priorities. And so I want to thank you all for the commitment and the work that you've done on this panel. If you are not returning, and for those of you who are returning, welcome back. And thank you again for your commitment and the work that you're doing. And so great things are happening in Kansas. And I love being part of, a group that we don't just exist just to have like random meetings, but where things are actually happening. And so I think that means a lot. That's great. So in terms of upcoming meetings, the Children's Cabinet and Trust Fund will have a special meeting to approve the Child Care Capacity Accelerator grants on Friday, June 23rd from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And that is going to be via Zoom. We are going to adjourn. And if in fact we do have time available, if work groups wanted to meet, we do have the ability to open up the meeting rooms for the work groups to connect. Were you all planning on meeting today, or shall we say enjoy the rest of your Friday and move forth, and we just hold off any further meetings until we return in July? Any thoughts?
This is Emily Barnes. None of my other work group members are here, and we're already planning on meeting this next week. So at least for task force or for zoning task force, I will not go into a break room by myself.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
This is Amy Gotchammer. We didn't really discuss it one way or the other. So I'm not sure how many of my group are here. There's a couple, but I don't know. We could go either way because we'll probably schedule another meeting before the next scheduled panel meeting anyway.
Okay, all right. And I know that Logan is having some difficulties in terms of our group, and so we wouldn't have everybody present. So I am going to give you all back, some of your time today, and decide that we are just going to go on ahead and adjourn. I want you guys to have a wonderful weekend and enjoy. I think we're supposed to have some decent weather, at least for a couple of days, maybe, and then it'll start raining again. We went from no rain to lots of it, right? And so, and that's okay. That's a good thing. We needed it. And so please stay up to date on all of our different social media platforms. Thank you all again for the work that you're doing, for your commitment to Kansas children and families, for everybody who's watching the live stream. Thank you all for watching. Please, again, reach out if you have questions or comments through the Kansas Open Forum. You guys have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend, and see you in July. Take care.